Ahoy, and welcome back to Leia's Library. Find yourself a cozy corner, get yourself something cozy to drink, and let's get started. So in this last video of 2022, we will be going over all of my favorite books of the year, or the best books that I read this year. And I read a lot of really good books this year, so it was hard to narrow them down, but I managed to find a top 10 with one honorable mention. Which I guess I'll just say right now. It's The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. Really enjoyed it. Almost made the list, but there were a couple others that hit just a little bit harder, but I did really enjoy it. So, on to the list. So like with my last video, I will be doing these in chronological order based on when I read them. So the first one, is Alone by Megan E. Freeman, which is a middle grade survival adventure poetry. It is about a 12-year-old girl named Maddie who hatches a scheme for a secret sleepover with some of her friends, only to wake up the next morning in a town that has been mysteriously abandoned. With nothing but her wits and her faithful Rottweiler companion George, Maddie must learn to survive on her own until help comes to her aid. I started the year with this book. It was the first book I read in 2022, and it was exactly what I needed to start the year. I really related Maddie's struggle to survive on her own to my own struggle with mental illness, especially in the times when Maddie finds herself seemingly at her rock bottom, but is able to, because she has to, sort of claw her way back up and keep going until the next time she falls, where she has to do it all over again. Because healing and progress is not linear, and I think it's really important to represent that, even, if it is about a 12-year-old girl trying to survive on her own in an abandoned town. It's not necessarily about mental illness, but I do think there are a lot of parallels, and I think that's a really important take to have, because that's just what happens when you're going through it. You fall down, you crawl your way back up because you have to, and you keep going until you fall down again and have to do it all over again. And there will be days where you feel like you've regressed, and you will have to claw your way back to just where you were in order to take a new step. And I don't know, just reading this struggle through Maddie's eyes, and with Megan E. Freeman's amazing writing, this book is so beautifully written, just hit me so hard, and it's one of my new favorite books. So if you haven't yet, I do strongly recommend you read it. And I hope you like it as much as I did. Next up is Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, which is an adult mythology retelling. It is a retelling of the Achilles mythos, told from the perspective of his childhood friend and lover, Patroclus. I knew this story was going to hit, or I had an inkling this story was going to hit because I love Greek mythology. I love the Achilles myth, especially. I love queer romances, so it ticked all the right boxes, and it was just so beautifully written, and it was just so masterfully told. And I'm just so happy that we have a queer perspective, because a lot of historians like to write Patroclus off as Achilles' just a friend. And I just love that this story is unabashedly gay. And yeah, it's just a beautiful story that is beautifully told. And I love it so much. The next one on the list is, okay, so I couldn't decide which one I liked better, so I'm putting them together. It's Hogfather and Thief of Time by Terry Pratchett. So Hogfather, I'm going to summarize these two very quickly. So Hogfather is death takes over Hogswatch, and it's up to his granddaughter Susan to find out why and to find out where the real Hogfather is. And Thief of Time is about the construction of the Discworld's first ever accurate clock, which is a bit of a problem because it runs the risk of stopping time itself. So it's up to Lutze, who is a monk of history, and his apprentice Lobsang to stop it. Both of these books are super charming and super witty and funny and also incredibly heartfelt and thought-provoking. They both hit really hard, both when they're trying to be funny and when they're trying to be more sincere and when they have something a bit more meaningful to say. If you're planning on diving into the Discworld, I would recommend reading the Death miniseries first, purely because it's my personal favorite and I'm biased. And if you do so, you will eventually get to these two. These are the last two in the series. Although all the ones in the Death series are great. I love them a lot. But these two are very good. Next one is The Bone Shard Emperor by Andrea Stewart, which is an adult high fantasy. This is a sequel to The Bone Shard Daughter, which is about a girl named Lynn, who is the Emperor's daughter but not his heir, because she has yet to master Bone Shard magic, which is this magic that sort of runs in the royal family bloodline. So with no one to believe in her but herself, she sets out to master Bone Shard magic in secret and claim her spot on the throne. Meanwhile, outside the palace gates, a revolution is brewing among the people. This is one of my favorite series, and I hope I can say that after next year, when the third book comes out. So the first book in the series I read last year, and it was one of my favorite reads of last year. So I'm delighted that the second one is one of my favorite reads of this year. I am just enthralled by these characters. Each and every one is so unique and vibrant and complex. And in this book, we get to see a lot of them coming together, which is really cool and very exciting. The magic in this world, especially the Bone Shard magic, is so cool and so creepy. I love it so much. I just love everything about this world and the characters, and I am so excited for the final book to come out next year. There's also queer rep in this in the form of a sapphic couple who I love dearly. I love them so much. I actually love all of the characters in this, except for like maybe one that I just don't vibe with as much. It's Sand. But I still think she's a really fascinating character. Yeah, I just love it so much. If you're looking for an excellent fantasy series, especially if you're looking for an Asian-inspired fantasy series, I could not recommend this series enough. Next is... Oh, I have this one too! I did not plan for this very well. Wang. Next one is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang, which is an adult high fantasy, another one. So there are two main characters in this. There's Mamoru, who is a 16-year-old boy and the eldest son of the village's most renowned warrior. So there's a lot of pressure put on Mamoru to be as great, if not greater, than his father. And he worries about not being able to hold up to that standard. And the other main character is his mother, Misaki, who has a secret past that she is no longer allowed to talk about, something she's put behind her. But with the threat of an invasion looming from across the sea, Misaki might have to become the warrior that she used to be. This book is everything you want in a character-driven high fantasy, and it is very much character-driven. Like, there's definitely a plot, but it is very focused on the characters, and all of the characters are really interesting. Like, the magic is excellent, the battles are super detailed and very attention-grabbing, and also very interesting because there's a lot of, like, elemental magic in this, and, like, different groups of people have different elemental magic, so it's really fun to see them come together in battle. The characters are complex. The world is so intriguing. It's set in a world that's sort of similar to ours, but more advanced in technology. But the village where the events in this book take place has chosen to remain more traditional. So it very much feels like feudal Japan, with like the barest touches of advanced technology mixed in. It's a really interesting mix. It's really cool. This book was just incredible. It's also very Asian inspired, with this village specifically being inspired by feudal Japan, as mentioned earlier, but there's also there's a group of people who are coded Chinese and a group of people who are coded Korean, so it's a lot of different Asian cultures sort of blended into this new world. So it's really interesting. I really like it. I haven't been keeping track. What number are we at? 6. Number 6 on the list is Picture Us in the Light by Kelly Lloyd Gilbert, which is a YA contemporary. This is about a Chinese-American teenage boy named Danny. He's just received a scholarship to go to his dream school, which he is excited about, but it also means leaving behind his 2 best friends, Harry and Regina. And Danny can't quite wrap his head around him and Harry not being in each other's lives anymore. He's very close to his friend Harry, and he just can't imagine not having Harry in his life anymore. And as if that wasn't enough, while looking through his parents' closet, Danny finds a box that proves that his parents have been keeping something from him his entire life. I was not expecting this book to punch me in the gut as much as it did. I don't read a lot of contemporary books. It's just not really my preferred genre, but I am so glad I decided to pick this one up because it was incredible. There's so much about this book to love. The exploration of mental health issues, the complexities of grief, the pressures of being a child of immigrant parents, coming to terms with your sexual orientation. There's just so much in this book, and all of it is handled incredibly well and is given its proper time to shine. And it's so impactful, and I still think about it to this day, and I read it back in June, I think. So good. The next one on the list is Nevermoor by Jessica Townsend, which is a middle grade fantasy. It is about Morrigan Crow, who is a cursed child, meaning she is fated to die on her 11th birthday, except when her birthday arrives, instead of dying, she is instead she is instead whisked away to a magical world called Nevermoor by an enigmatic and jubilant man named Jupiter North. So if you're a friend of the channel, you've seen me talk about this book a lot, and I do apologize, but I also don't, because these books are just so adorable and so beautiful, and I can't stop talking about them. I'm sorry, but I'm not, but I am. This world is if you combined the world of Harry Potter with Wonderland, and doesn't that sound that's the level of charm and whimsy we're talking about, coupled with some truly lovely characters. Jupiter is fantastic. Everyone needs a Jupiter in their life. Someone to lift you up and believe in you unconditionally and without limitations. And Morrigan is learning what it's like to belong and to be loved and make friends for the first time in her life. And it's such a fantastic read. Please read it. Next one on the list is Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel, which is an adult mythology retelling. It's a retelling of Kaikeyi, the vilified queen from the Ramayana. In this, Kaikeyi is born the only daughter of the kingdom of Kaikeyi. As such, her only worth is seen as how good of a marriage alliance she can make. In her search for independence, she comes across these ancient texts and unlocks a magic in her that allows her to sort of ascend and become a beloved warrior queen. But as evil forces that she read about as a child threaten her world, the path that she painstakingly forged clashes with the will of the gods, and Kaikeyi must decide if her resistance is worth the possible destruction and what kind of a legacy she will leave behind. This may be the best book I read this year. The storytelling is excellent. The writing is beautiful. The character work for all of the characters, but especially for Kaikeyi, is breathtaking. You get to watch as this entirely overlooked woman manages to crawl her way to the top with no one to fight for her except herself, and you see her fight to make the world better for herself and the women around her. And then one by one, you watch as each one of these things she's fought tooth and nail for is taken from her, and it's heartbreaking and it is infuriating because it makes you think what has changed and what hasn't changed. I was reading this the same month that Roe v. Wade was overturned in the United States, and the parallels were not lost on me, and it was just such a terrible gut punch. I think this is a book that's almost necessary to read. I really think everyone should read it, and maybe not everyone will like it as much as I did, or maybe they won't get the same things from it as I did, but I do think everyone should at least try, because I do think it has something to say. And it also, on top of all that, on a slightly lighter note, it gives a voice to a character who has been sort of one note and maybe really hasn't had her side of the story developed, so I do always love to see that. So yeah, loved this book. Maybe the best book of the year that I've read. But I'm really bad at decisions. And coming close to the end of the list, next one is Elatsoe by Darcie Littlebadger, which is a YA fantasy mystery. So this takes place in a world that's similar to our own, but where monsters and magical beings are commonplace. Our protagonist, Elatsoe, can raise the ghosts of dead animals, a gift that's passed down through her Lipan-Apache family. When Elatsoe's cousin is murdered in a town that wants no prying eyes, Elatsoe will have to use every ounce of her cunning and skills to find his killer and lay his restless spirit to rest. Darcie Littlebadger is a new favorite author of mine. So far I've read 2 of her books, and they've both been great. This is the first one that I read. I love this world. I would love to visit, maybe even live there. It's this really unique blend of indigenous and non-indigenous myths and beliefs. So you have ghosts, but there are also vampires and fairies, which is really cool. And Elatsoe is an asexual character, which is also really cool because we don't see a whole lot of asexual representation. It doesn't have anything to do with the story at all, but it's nice. We love to see it. And speaking of the story, I love it. It's equal parts, really heartbreaking, but also very hopeful. And the murder mystery is very well executed, and I'm excited to read more of her work. And the last book on this list is House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland, which is a YA fantasy horror. This is about 3 sisters who mysteriously disappeared when they were children, only to reappear 1 month later with no explanation. They don't remember anything, they don't know, nobody knows who took them or where they went or why they came back. It's this huge mystery that's followed them their whole lives. But they came back different. Their hair and eyes had changed color, and they seemed to have this strange effect on people around them. The story picks up when the oldest sister mysteriously disappears again, and the other 2 sisters set out to find her. But in order to do so, they'll first have to unravel the mystery of their childhood disappearance. This book was so good. The overall atmosphere was so creepy and unsettling. Throughout the whole book, there's just this sense that something is off. It's very Uncanny Valley, where it's this could be normal, but I don't think it is. It's just tiny degree of wrong. And the way the author was able to lay these lay this tiny little trail of breadcrumbs along the way, so we were only ever getting just as much information as we needed to keep us interested and wanting more. It was just genius. And the way information was sprinkled in that would utterly change how we viewed events that had been described to us earlier in the book. So as a reader, you get to keep reevaluating what you know, and each time it gets more and more horrific. And it was just so good. I was explaining this book's premise to somebody, and their reaction was, "Oh, so do you think it's maybe a metaphor for how a traumatic event can utterly change you?" And no, I hadn't considered that, but that's an excellent take, and it works really well with the story. I don't know if that was the intention, But even if it's not, it's a great take, and this book was just so good. There's like just enough horror for it to be creepy, but not enough for it to be like, we don't get into like Junji Ito territory, but like just enough for it to be like, no merci. I love this book. And those were my favorite books of the year. Let me know what your favorite book was down in the comments, and if you've read any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. That is everything for 2022, so I will not see you until the new year. If you would like to see me in the meantime, you can follow me on Instagram at Leia Like the Princess. You can also find my little embroidery and art star over on Instagram at Moonlit Cat Creations, or you can go directly to its website at moonlightcatcreations.com. Thank you so much for watching this year, and until next time, stay cozy.